When I came in this morning, I did not know what I was going to say. So I looked at the Parsha and it said, Emor, Azoi. When I was thinking about what to say, I looked at the Parsha. Some of the stuff seemed like it was more of a repetition. Didn't really want to touch on those topics so much. We talk about the Kohen and some sanctity. We've talked about that in different ways in the Parshiot before. Maybe now it's in a new way. We have this rehashing of the festivals, which again seems like, third time's the charm. Maybe we speak about it later. We spoke about it before. Uh, didn't really feel so interesting. And I was drawn to this story at the end of the Vayakev, Vayikalel, this blasphemer. I mean, it's a fantastic English word also. Just kind of rolls off the tongue in a really nice way. So I was really drawn to this story and trying to figure out what I would say about it. And I guess the irony is that what came to me is to use everything else to maybe bring some highlight to the story of the blasphemer in a different way. So the Parsha, as we said, it talks a lot about sanctity. We talk about the sanctity of the Kohen Gadol, what kind of blemishes disqualify him from being allowed to do his service. We talk about, then we move to the offerings, what constitutes truma, what standards there are, what disqualifies an animal from being brought. And then it says, in the middle of the parsha, we have this inflection point. It says, sanctify Hashem's name and commandments. And then it tells us how we do that throughout the year. All the different holidays, we talk about the menorah, we talk about the shulchan. And I guess what's interesting is when the parsha starts off, they bring down a number of different sources that say that when the parsha starts off with Emor ve'amarta, it's talking about two different lashonos of speaking. One that talks to the Kohen and then extends it to the Am. One that talks to a person's inner and then extends it to the outer. Maybe it's a personal and a public. Maybe it's something that's a little bit more about holy and mundane. And really this theme gets reinforced throughout the Parsha as we go. So I was reading Rabbi Sachs, and he brings down a few interesting ideas on the section about the festivals, which to me was the most repeated part that we talk about. But I guess what's interesting is that right at the beginning of that section, it brings down the commandment of Shabbat again. It says Shabbat is important, 6 days on the seventh, this is how it works. And then it goes again and it starts off with all the festivals. So he brings down a few different sources that are explaining what this is. Rashi says a person would normally think that festivals are not as important as the Shabbat. We bring the Shabbat here to show you that even though you can work, and even though a man is the one who's defining on what day the festival should start, it's not divinely ordained. We should consider them and treat them with equal respect. Then he brings down the Ramban. He says that the Ramban is talking about, just like before, the last time we brought down the Shabbat was right before the Mishkan. You shouldn't desecrate the Shabbat even to make these kinds of holy things. On Shabbat, if it falls out on Yom Tov, you can't cook. You have to still follow the rules of the Shabbat. So it's sort of prioritizing Shabbat first. And then he brings down a story of the Vilna Gaon, which is kind of going a little bit more in depth. And he describes that the reason why it brings down Shabbat here is to tell us that the Shabbat of the festivals is a Shabbat too. So if you do a counting, you see that Pesach has 1 and 7. We're just going to go according to not the Suffolk counting of Yom Tov, but Pesach has 1 and 7. Shavuot has 1 day. Rosh Hashanah has 1 day. And then Sukkot and Shmini Atzeres has another 2. So we have our 6 days. And then Yom Kippur becomes the 7th day. Shabbat Shabbaton. We end up with a 7th Shabbat for the festivals of themselves. What's interesting about this is the way that he brings this as an idea of fractals. We think about this cycle of 7 with holiness sort of culminating. We have the week cycle that we know, the Shabbat cycle. We work for 6 days and on the 7th we rest. And here he brings this idea into the holiday cycle. In a few weeks upcoming, we're going to talk about the year cycle of Shemitah as well from Yovel standpoint. And I guess what's amazing about this is that this also highlights the section of this parsha that isn't really a holiday in the festival section, is Sphira. It connects with what we're going through right now, this cycle of 7 sevens. It's a cycle where, if you think about it, if this 7 sevens is really the ultimate combination of sevens. We have every possible permutation of the Sphirot, the countings, as they relate to each other. But each of the 7 Sphirot that we're talking about are all the ones that are between interpersonal people. Chesed, Gvura, Tiferet, Netzach, Hod, Yesod, and Malchut. And in a way, we think about this, the idea of this section of the Parsha where it talked about festivals, it uses 2 words to really talk about this. It uses moed, which is to set a time, and it is mikra kodesh. We call them holy. And I think what this does is, in a way, it connects back to the power of the Emor of all of this, that we as humans we are given the power to bring things into existence. We set when the Rosh Chodesh is, that defines when the holidays happen, but there's this combination of us setting time, being intentional about those kinds of things, and using that to be Mikra Kodesh, both to be coming closer and also to do the stating of what it is that we're talking about. So what is the Zman of the Sfirat HaOmer? It's not like Pesach and Shavuot that are either on either ends of it, that are the events. It is the process of progressing. It is the time when we integrate. And a lot of the integration is in around all of those different combinations of the Sfirot, how they interact with each other, how we interact with the people around us. And in a way, when you think about this maybe helps us understand the story of the blasphemer the most. The blasphemer, what's the story that brought this up in the first place? We bring down what his lineage was. He was the son of Shlomit ben Divri from the Shevet of Dan, and he was a son of an Israelite woman and a Mitzri man. So we see here that this is a person who was, as defined by the Parsha, clearly struggling with their identity. The story goes that he went to Beis Din and he said, I want to pitch my tent with Shevet Dan. My mother comes from this lineage, that's where I belong. And they said, well, the Shvatim go according to the father, not the mother, but you're still a Jew. So this challenge eventually leads him to the horrible response that we have, where he pierces the nation with this blasphemous cursing of God's name, or cursing in God's name. Very challenging. But I guess what it does also for me, when I sit here, I was thinking about this. We have Omer is nestled in the holidays, these times of simcha, these times of rejoicing, of connection. And yet the way that we practice the Omer is don't listen to music, don't shave, all of those kinds of things. And in a way, I guess what it's showing us is the way that this time of integration is something that we get to Emor v'amarta on. We get to have a say on. And when we see that Ben Adam L'Chavero, the stories we have from Rabbi Akiva and his students, when they were not doing what they needed to, is kind of what allows us to make the change to integrate the holiday in our own way now. To understand that this bridge for us is to understand who we are, maybe adjust our identity, don't be so rigid in it, and find a way to grow in that way, and to find the path to progress from the Yetzias Mitzrayim, the salvation, to the Shavuot, the adoption of the Torah, the responsibility that we get. And I think maybe this is even in the word itself. The Parsha starts off, it's called Emor, and then we're given the Omer. So Aleph is this lashon of source. It's where all things come from. That's the Shabbat. This is given to us by God, those kinds of things. And Ayin is something that we use as a tool of discernment. It's the eye. It's how we create fractions between things. We define difference between things. And when it's used wrong, maybe that's what happened with the students of Rabbi Akiva. They had amazing powers of good stuff that they had, amazing wisdom, but they didn't use it properly in a discerning way between each other. And I guess this leads to that last part of the parsha, which kind of seems like it's thrown in just before the blasphemer, is the two activities that we're guided to. One is the menorah, and the other one is the lechem on the shulchan. And the story of the menorah is that connection of wisdom. It's this pure light that we have kind of connected with the head and the God above. And then we have the lechem, which is the connection with the mundane. I mean, there's stories brought down that maybe his blasphemy was about God should have bread that's 7 days old, and different kinds of kilkel or of cursing that come from this. But it's clear that we need to bring the two of those things together, the head and the heart. They say that the lechem was really to personify the business side of things, the interpersonal dealings with people. It's the mundane side of things. But the responsibility here, I think, that we get from the parsha is to find the right power of dibur, but ultimately understanding that we're connecting the holy and the mundane in some way, Emor v'amarta, and we're using that in a way at this specific time to integrate and to really bring the right things in Sheva, in Teva, in the way that we're doing things as we progress from the Yitzia to the Shavuot, to be the Kabbalah Ol Malchus Shamayim.